You're listening to Nutrition Matters podcast with Paige Smathers, registered dietitian nutritionist. Nutrition Matters podcast explores how to approach food and your body in a whole new way. I interview people who share stories and expertise in rejecting diet culture, making peace with food, and discovering a more positive, realistic, and sustainable approach to health and well-being. I'm Paige Smathers, registered dietitian, nutritionist, and owner of Positive Nutrition, an in-person nutrition therapy practice in Salt Lake City, Utah. I offer free resources, including this podcast, a blog, and posts on social media. If you're local to Salt Lake City, check out our services and availability for appointments, and keep your eyes out for in-person groups on mindfulness, intuitive eating, body image resilience, and more. Go to positive-nutrition.com and hit subscribe if you'd like to keep in touch. I also offer online courses covering topics like the science of nutrition, mindfulness, and healing your relationship with food. Check those out at positive-nutrition.com/academy. If you like what you hear on the podcast, you can make a difference by leaving a review, sharing with friends and family, or making a donation. Thank you so much for your support. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook if you'd like to have a little more food for thought at Paige Smathers RD. Thank you so much for listening. Hello, podcast listeners. Welcome to another episode of Nutrition Matters. My name is Paige, and I'm your host. And it's the most wonderful time of the year, right? It is currently, in the time I'm recording this, it is the holiday season, smack dab in the middle of it, end of 2019. Lots going on politically, personally, all of that. It's a busy time of year, right? So I thought that I would record an episode just sort of in an effort to support you as you navigate this potentially tricky time of year. I'll first start off by saying if you hear me say, oh, the holidays are a tricky time with food, and you're like, you know what? I don't actually feel that way. I just want you to know that is awesome. That says a lot about your growth, or even just maybe your just sort of baseline positive relationship with food. That's awesome. I hope that you enjoy this time of year at some point when it comes to food. I hope that you look forward to the fun food events and that they don't scare you and that they do bring you peace. So if you can remember a time in your life where food during the holidays was really stressful for you and really scary, and if you're kind of feeling differently now, man, I just want to say, like, that's awesome. Pat yourself on the back. That's a really big deal. Now, if you're listening to that and you're like, yes, I relate, that is where I'm at, that is what I'm struggling with, I'm really resonating with that idea of this time of year being really difficult, I just want you to know you are so not alone. This is really tricky time, a really tricky time for so many of my clients, and so much of the work that I do this time of year is talking about boundaries, talking about how to navigate diet talk, talking about how to challenge the scarcity mindset we get when it comes to the end of the year and the holidays, or the all or nothing mindset we sometimes get. So this podcast is for you. If you feel like you are struggling, or if you feel like you just need a little pep talk, a little tune up with this stuff, I'm here for you. Hopefully this podcast is supportive in your journey finding peace with food, especially this time of year. So before I dive into that, I do want to mention that there was a podcast episode that I released a year ago, right around this time, that was all about finding peace with food during the holidays. And I recorded that podcast with Molly Barr, who's a awesome therapist who I just think the world of. It was really, really good. So I want to refer you to that podcast if you're interested in sort of seeing what you can do to kind of dive in a little bit deeper with this stuff, or even in addition to what I'm going to be talking about today. If you find that supportive and helpful, feel free to check that out. So that's episode 139 of Nutrition Matters podcast with Molly Barr. And I'll go ahead and post that in the show notes as well, so that you can have an easy access to it. Okay, so a couple days ago, I put the word out and just said, hey, what questions would you like me to talk about or work through or explore on this week's podcast episode? I'm going to kind of take a break from interviews for a bit for today and just talk about these questions that I received. It's kind of interesting when I put it out there to to listeners to kind of find out what resonates from the podcast. What podcast do you enjoy the most? There seem to be some common themes, and for me, when I record these Q&A questions, I'm always like, oh, who's going to like that? It's just me. It's boring. But I get good feedback about these podcasts, so I hope that they feel supportive for you. All right, so let's dive into some of these questions. The first question I wanted to work through is this question that said, what do you do when you need to lose weight, but also need a healthy relationship with food? What's the first step? So this is a really great question, and likely one that I can't quite do justice in a podcast format, and I could do a lot better, individually, one-on-one with the person here in my office that I'm working with, as a dietitian in nutrition therapy. But I'll kind of talk in generalities here to see if this is helpful. So first of all, I want to understand this I need to lose weight thing. Is that social pressure? Is that you feel uncomfortable in your body? Is that your clothes don't fit? Is that something your doctor told you? Is that an effort to prevent disease or to manage chronic disease? Where does that come from? Just kind of take a minute to get really grounded with that question. Why do I feel like I need to lose weight? I actually find, just as an aside, sometimes what's more interesting than the question itself that we're asking ourselves or asking someone else, sometimes what's even more interesting than that original question is questioning the question. So, okay, we can look at what do you do if you need to lose weight? All right. But also, why am I asking that question in the first place? I think actually brings a lot of really interesting information our way. So if it's, my doctor told me that I need to, it's really useful to start looking at the research that shows that regardless of what happens with your weight, when you engage in healthy behaviors like, quitting smoking and reducing your alcohol consumption and increasing your fruits and vegetables and, getting your movement in alignment, meaning like not too much, but getting some movement and exercise in your life, and also resting, and also stress management. Those types of behaviors actually tend to promote our health and well-being, and we see this like through lab values. We see this with blood pressure. We see this with quality of life measures. We actually see improvements in those measures regardless of whether or not the weight goes down. So if this is a health concern, if this need to lose weight is, oh, I just feel like for my health, I need to do this, I want to get really clear here that so often this quote need to lose weight, we want to be really clear that actually that is called a diet, and diets are really far from health promoting for us. And I know that that feels countercultural and probably confusing, and maybe you feel like your eyes are crossed trying to kind of figure this out and wrap your head around it. But truthfully, it's really important to recognize that your health and well-being can be promoted and can be honored through behaviors that feel life-affirming and healthy and balanced and good for you, even if your weight doesn't happen to change as a result of those behaviors. So with this question of what do I do if I feel like I need to lose weight, but I also really know that I need a healthy relationship with food, what's the first step? I think it's important to recognize that a healthy relationship with food might mean your weight stays the same, might mean your weight changes, but the point of creating a healthy relationship with food is that we're saying, I'm going to trust that my body will be the right weight for me when I engage in behaviors that feel good, that promote my health and well-being, that give me energy, that help me feel alive and vibrant and positive. When we are taking care of ourselves in a way that really allows us to live the life we want to live, that is a healthy relationship with food. And we don't know what's going to happen to your weight as a result of you doing that, but I do know that that will promote your health and well-being. So a lot of times it kind of feels like you need to choose, okay, do I want to lose weight for my health, or do I want to have a healthy relationship with food for my mental health? Maybe it feels like this dichotomy. And what I really hope you get from this very tiny little snippet of what I would normally talk about individually with a client is uh, weight loss and diets are not health promoting usually. Like these usually take us, or a very high percentage of the time, these take us further away from our health and well-being. So getting clear about that we're not choosing between health and just gluttony or something like that. We're actually choosing our health and our well-being when we choose to work on a healthy relationship with food. Now, this is a really complex process. This is not just something that you like read a book and you're like, boom, I know how to do it now. And if you are one of those people, that's awesome, and I'm super happy for you. But if you're not one of those people, if you feel like you're really wrestling with this, I just want to validate, like, this is a tough, really tough journey, and it's the reason why I have a job, and the reason why I'm busy, and the reason why I have, two other fabulous dietitians in my practice who do this work alongside me. And also why I've built online courses about this. This is a journey. There's a lot of unlearning to do. So, what is the first step? What I will say is nutrition usually suffers when weight loss is the goal. So, if you can work on creating a healthy relationship with food, that is going to help your overall health and well-being, and your weight will do the right thing for you when you put that as a priority, to honor your body, to connect to it, to care for it, to rest it, to move it, to feed it, to hydrate it, all those things. And if you need more help with this, first of all, I want to just say that is not weird. That is not abnormal. There's nothing wrong with you. This is tough. And so check out my course, Positive Nutrition for Life. That is a really in-depth course. I walk you through the entire intuitive eating book. Plus, on top of that, I talk about body liberation. I talk about what positive nutrition is. I talk about mindfulness. It's a really cool course that has a 77-page workbook to go alongside it. It's available anytime. It's completely online. You can take it at your own pace. So check that out. See if that might be helpful to you if you're kind of feeling like, ooh, I'm intrigued, but I don't know how to do this. Check that out. Also, if you're like, oh, that course is just a lot, it's a big commitment, be sure to just check out the Intuitive Eating book by Elise Resch and Evelyn Tribole. And if you're interested in the course, check it out at positive-nutrition.com/academy. And just remember, I think the big point here is that nutrition suffers when weight loss is the goal. Okay, someone else reached out and said, I felt like I had intuitive eating down and then went nuts on food on Thanksgiving. Any insight? All right, my friend, I just want to say, first of all, Thanksgiving is the time to feast. It's okay. It's like part of why you went, quote, nuts on food on Thanksgiving. There's probably lots of reasons for it. First of all, give yourself a break. It sounds like this is one of your first experiences with the holiday season, with this new intuitive eating paradigm and philosophy under your belt. So give yourself a little bit of space to explore and to just, see how this works and to learn new things about yourself. I think it's perfectly appropriate and reasonable to have moments in our life where we kind of go nuts on food and we feast and we feel really full and we just have a lot of fun with pies and really yummy foods. I think that that's a really healthy, normal relationship and approach to food. So I would also say that if you are having thoughts and feelings like, okay, I've ruined it, Thanksgiving sent me over the edge, I'm totally off, quote unquote, now with intuitive eating, I'm ruined, I'm a loser, why can't I do anything? If you're having those types of thoughts about it, I really encourage you to remember that this intuitive eating, there is no beginning, there is no end. It just is what it is. We have moments where we eat a lot. We have moments where we undershoot what our nutritional needs, and we end up hungry sooner than we planned. This is all normal. This is all okay. This is all part of a healthy, reasonable, balanced approach to food. So I think, in the grand scheme of your year, if you go nuts on food on Thanksgiving, I would say that's not really the end of the world. And it doesn't really need to mean anything about whether or not you quote unquote have intuitive eating down. It could just mean that you feasted and you enjoyed. And, over time, I think it's really important to remember this is one of the things I love to tell my clients. And also, I have a blog post about this if this is interesting to you. But remember that your body likes averages. And you don't need to make the averages happen. They just happen themselves. So you don't need to eat the perfect amount of vitamin C every day for your body to have, an appropriate vitamin C level coursing through your veins type of thing. And you don't need to eat the perfect amount of protein every day. You don't need to eat the perfect amount of fiber. You don't need to eat the perfect amount of any nutrient, including, calories or energy. Your body knows how to help you find the balance. And thank goodness for that. Otherwise, all of us would be dead, because if our bodies didn't know how to find the average, there's no way that we could actually be perfect 100% of each of the nutrients that we need every single day. It just doesn't exist. So just trust the fact that your body will find that average for you, even if you have a day where you eat more, or if you have a day where you don't quite eat enough, your body will find the average as long as you are connecting to it, honoring it, and meeting your body's needs. Now, there's some caveats and some nuance to this. Of course, if you're in eating disorder recovery, you might need a little bit of help one-on-one with a dietitian to kind of explore the nuances of what I'm saying. But in general, it's really important to just remember your body likes averages. You don't need to stress about a day where you just let loose and feast and enjoy a holiday like Thanksgiving. Okay. Another person asked, how do you discuss intuitive eating with family to help alleviate meal pressure? So this is a really good question. And what I'll say is that there's nothing you can probably realistically do to make your family's pressure about, you and your eating and your food choices. There might not be a lot you can do to cause them to stop putting that pressure on you. You can definitely set boundaries. You can let them know how it makes you feel. You can change the subject. You can try to explain intuitive eating. But what I will say is intuitive eating is really difficult to explain to someone who is knee-deep in diet culture. And honestly, I have a lot of compassion for people. Like, this isn't necessarily their fault. Especially when intuitive eating is new, it's really exciting, and you want to just kind of say like, I want to tell everyone about this. I want everyone to know that you don't need to be so rigid about food and you can enjoy food without guilt, all this stuff. It's really exciting. But kind of beware of how much you expect from people in terms of their understanding and their adopting of intuitive eating if they're really knee-deep in diet culture. That just might not be super accessible to them. So I think rather than trying to explain the entire framework of intuitive eating with your family in an effort to get them to change their behaviors around you, what I would say is setting a boundary and not necessarily trying to educate, but just saying, you know what? I do better with my health and well-being when we can sit and just gather around food and not talk about, how much I'm eating or what I'm eating or whatever. You could pull people aside privately and have these conversations one-on-one. You could change the subject at the dinner table. You could have a few questions kind of on the tip of your tongue of conversation starters that could kind of hopefully breed some really interesting discussion about, hey, what are upcoming vacations you guys have planned? Or what are you guys looking forward to? Or what's the best movie you recently watched? Or when's the last time you changed your mind about something? Might feel a little awkward to change the subject, or it might feel a little awkward to set a boundary of like, hey, when you say that, this is how it makes me feel. Here's what I need from you. Thanks so much. I love you. Thank you for honoring me and where I am with this. I know that that's a lot to ask and it can feel awkward, but it's also incredibly liberating to honor your own needs and to stop betraying yourself in an effort to avoid discomfort from other people. So I would say that discussing intuitive eating with family is difficult, especially if they just are in a place where they just can't hear it. So I always like to look at myself and say, okay, what could I change about my expectations or about my approach or about even my boundaries that I could, like, what can I do to help alleviate the pressure that I'm feeling rather than what can they do to alleviate the pressure they're putting on me. Now, there's probably, on a practical level, there's probably a balance to find between taking responsibility ourselves, but also asking for what we need from others. And I think that that's probably the healthiest places to find that balance for ourselves. But what I would say is just trying to explain intuitive eating is going to be difficult. It is for me. It's what I do full time as a job. Yet when I'm with friends and family, I am met with blank stares when I try to explain what I do for work. Okay, the last thing I wanted to say, and I have to kind of cut this podcast short because I don't have a ton of time to record today. I want to let you know that I'm going to take a break for the rest of December as far as recording podcasts. So I hope that this gets you through. I hope that this feels helpful and supportive for you. But the last thing I wanted to say is that as we finish up our year, 2019, we're going to be approaching that time of year where people are really trying to pressure us to make resolutions. Now, if you're a resolution person, awesome. I love it. That's great. If you're not a resolution person, that's also okay. But I just want to kind of mention that if you notice your mind producing thoughts like, well, this is my last chance to eat this food because January 1st, I'm going to blah, 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 blah with food. I'm going to stop eating that, or I'm going to cut this out, or I'm going to go on that plan, or whatever. If you notice those types of thoughts coming up for yourself, I just want to give you tons and tons of permission to not make weight loss your resolution this year. Now, that might sound a little bit weird. That might seem kind of like an odd idea. But here's my big reason why. When weight loss or a diet or restriction is looming in the future, if you're like, oh, I can't do that, I won't be able to eat this soon, so now is my chance. I hope that you can recognize that planning of future restriction often leads to current chaos and just total dysfunction and even binging around food. So it is very tempting to sort of make your current December eating, quote, okay by planning some type of diet in the future, but I just want to give you lots of permission to not do that. Maybe even make a plan to make your favorite thing, your favorite treat, your favorite holiday food again in January or February. Challenge that mentality that says, oh, every January 1st that I just get right back on this, this hamster wheel of diets. This is a trap. You run far away from this trap of the New Year's resolution of weight loss. You don't have to go on a diet to be healthy or lovable for that matter. In fact, if you really want to work on your health and your well-being, dieting is going to make it harder to achieve the health that you so desperately want. So rather than pursuing weight loss this new year, why don't you make a resolution to work on an area of self-care that feels good to you? Maybe that's connecting to your sense of fullness or your sense of hunger. Or maybe that's committing to setting aside a weekly trip to the grocery store to buy foods for meals and snacks. Maybe that's investing in my meal planning webinar for $20 and learning how to plan meals in a way that's not going to be diety, but that's going to support your nutritional needs. Can you work on finding a form of movement that feels good to you, that makes you happy, that feels life enhancing? Can you work on getting adequate sleep? Solid 8 hours of sleep per night, or 9 if you're like me. I need 9. Can you work on balancing and organizing your commitments and stresses of your life so that you can carve out space to take care of yourself? So really look at your self-talk around the new year and run far away from the resolution that says, I'm going to go on that diet in the new year. If health is really what you're looking for, this diet resolution is actually going to take you further away from that. And that's kind of the message I wanted to leave you with as we approach starting our new year, 2020. I cannot wait. I just want to leave you with just a little pep talk. You're doing awesome. Zoom out, take a look at what you've done so far this year. Take a look at your progress. Take a look at your ups and your downs and your wins and your epiphanies, and give yourself some credit for all the hard work you've been doing. I know you've been doing this hard work because many of you reach out to me and let me know. I am so excited for this momentum you've built. I hope you give yourself credit for it, and I hope that you continue to breathe and be kind to yourself and be gentle with yourself and continue on this journey of intuitive eating, making peace with food and your body. And I really hope that you have a fantastic end of 2019, and I look forward to recording another episode in 2020. Well, I sincerely hope you've enjoyed this conversation. If you haven't already, please go ahead and leave a review on iTunes. Thanks again so much for listening, and we'll see you soon for another episode.